everybody. This is a video on how to clean buttons, and I got a couple of types of different buttons I'm going to show you. First one I'm going to start with is Tomback. Tomback is this kind of gunmetal colored button, and you find these at late 1700s sites mainly, and early 1800s sites. The way to clean these is really if they've got those green incrustations on them. I see you've removed some of these here. You're going to need to get some 0000 fine steel wool and just go in very circular motions across the face to be able to remove that without scratching the button. You can use other chemical means if you want, but I prefer the means of just using that very fine abrasion to remove that. Some people like to polish them up. I like them kind of as they come out of the ground, but originally they would look silver colored. You can always tell a Tomback button because they read low, and you notice they've got, a lot of them have this central mound in the back with a shank that's basically added in. And so that some of the backs of them have a turned appearance, like almost like they were turned on a lathe with circular marks. So even a fragment's identifiable. Next thing I want to talk about is pewter buttons. Pewter buttons, of course, come out of the ground looking kind of crappy. They're often flaky, like this one. You notice that the edges are flaking away here. This one is not treated with anything, so the edges are going to continue to flake away as it's already doing on my fingers. Notice that this one was made in a scissor mold, a two-piece mold, and then the shank was bored in later. Great early to mid 1700s example button there. But what I do with these is I treat them with 50-50 Elmer's glue and water. So just take common Elmer's glue. The great thing about Elmer's glue to do something, and I also use this to put ceramics back together with, especially stoneware. Believe it or not, Elmer's glue will hold a 50-pound piece of stoneware together. But at any rate, you mix the 50-50 Elmer's glue and water, you use a small paintbrush, and you paint that on and allow it to dry. And here's what that looks like. I mean, you can tell the button on the right's been treated with it. You can tell there's hardly any difference in how that looks. So it really doesn't change the appearance, but it does keep it from flaking away. This is a late 1700s regimental eagle button. Here it's missing the shank, but of course if I hadn't treated that, that would have flaked away to absolutely nothing. So I'm glad that I was able to preserve that. So that's how to clean pewter buttons. The next buttons I want to talk about are just the regular flat buttons, one-piece buttons. Really, the old-timers used to call them coin buttons. And these come in all kinds of different sizes. And the best way to clean these, actually, is just with a wooden shish kebab stick. I mean, people sell those expensive cleaning kits, Andre's pencils, and so forth and so on. But honestly, I've been using these for 30-something years now. And the great thing about a pack of shish kebab sticks is that you can basically keep resharpening them, and they get shorter and shorter and shorter, and you can just keep using them indefinitely. One pack will last you the rest of your life. And so I just sharpen them, with a pocket knife once they get all worn down. So it's pretty easy to do. And the way you want to clean these buttons is, and this, of course, are the majority of the buttons that are found, are those one-piece flat buttons. And most of them have no design on the face, but what you want to do is you want to go with that shish kebab stick pretty much parallel to the surface of the button itself, like that. Okay, and so that's going to allow you to see if there's any design. If there's any design stamped in there, you're going to reevaluate and maybe decide to do another cleaning method. Now for the back marks, these back marks that are stamped into the flat face of the button, if you were to use water or olive oil, which is awful, never ever use olive oil, it'll leach out of that button for decades and it'll make a nasty mess. So definitely don't use olive oil. But basically you're going to take it and you do that same method here, looking for a back mark. Okay, and then once you're done, notice that the verdigris stays down in the design when you use this method instead of water. If I were to dip this in water, even just dip it in water, all of that would disappear. Okay, so what we're doing is removing the patina from the top, and then I'm going to brush that with my finger, okay? And that's going to darken slightly from the natural oils on my skin the metal that's cleared off, and you're left with a back mark that you can read, superior to gold plate. Okay, so British made button with a shank, early 1800s. Okay, so that's how you clean those. Be careful of two-piece buttons that do have a back mark that's like a presidential back mark. So watch out for those. When you see those, some George Washington inaugural types have that, just a back mark. So do clean your flat buttons. There's often more there than meets the eye. For one-piece convex buttons, I prefer, if they're not gilded, to use that same toothpick method. And sometimes I will actually use a different method on the back than I use on the front. Notice this has a raised mark. Anytime there's a raised mark, a lot of times what I like to do is I like to use some fine 0000 steel wool and just go very lightly just to bring that top of that out, and then I'll go through with the oil from my finger and rub that so you can just see that the word gold there come up where I've rubbed that. Okay, and then for this side, all I did was I went through with the toothpick once I determined that there was not any gold gilding remaining, and toothpicked the very top of the design off. Then I just wiped it with my finger to bring the design out. So that's a beautiful example there of a one-piece convex button, probably 1830s or so, 1820s, 1830s. Here's another one done exactly the same way, where I just toothpicked the very top of the design that I wiped with a little bit of finger oil. You can see even more, it just popped. Okay, and again, if you have a back mark, you may want to employ a different cleaning method there. For raised marks, especially raised mark to press channel, I like the steel wool on the back, unless there's gilding present, and in which case I'll probably use a different cleaning method that I'm about to show you. Okay, so if there is a gilded button that you would like to clean, if I see any trace of gilding remaining, a lot of times what I'll do is use I used to use aluminum jelly. I've also tried lemon juice. But what I've found is the thing that works the best is a dot of dish soap, very easy, and a brass bristle brush. This one's seen better days, but it's my main go-to brush. Okay, so that brass bristle with some of the dishwashing detergent on the face of the button, you can brush this very lightly. You can control mechanically how much pressure you're putting on that, and determine when to stop. Okay, you can always stop at any point, but you can never reverse a process on cleaning. So you can always clean more, but you can never unclean. Okay, so that's important to remember. This, however, this is a beware. This was sold to me as a brass bristled brush. You can tell that it is not brass bristled. It's already started to rust. Okay, when I bought this, it looked like this. Okay, and it was all shiny. Notice that this one's still shiny because it's brass. This one is brass plated iron. So guess what this iron or steel did to a beautiful button? It absolutely destroyed it because it took all the gilding right off. And so that's how I knew that this was a fake brass bristled brush. So beware, these do exist. They do sell them cheaply at places like Hobby Lobby and so forth, or Harbor Freight. So make sure that you have a genuine brass bristled brush that's a solid brass bristles. Okay, so I'm going to show you what some of those results look like. First off, I cleaned this button, I think originally with aluminum jelly, and it still had some issues. This is a Jacksonian button. It's actually a three-piece button, most likely. Probably has an applied rim here. But that's not a military button. That is a Jacksonian button. You can always tell a Jacksonian button by this wide, thick outer rim and a design in the middle, and never any words of any sort. Okay, so and I went ahead and did that with the brass bristle brush and a dot of dish soap. Here's another example. This is a Golden Age button. I didn't quite get all of the crud off of this, but I decided to stop since I was worried about losing gold in the fields. But a beautiful button, two-piece button. What I did was I left the back encrusted. I hit the front with the water, of course, because remember you can lose a back mark if you use water. So I hit the front with the soap and brass bristle brush. Came out beautifully, saved almost all of the gold that was left on it. And then I let it completely dry. I went back with that fine steel wool and hit the very top of the design, stopped when I got down to the letters, and I took a finger and rubbed a little finger oil so I could read Leavenworth and Company there on the back, extra rich. So beautiful golden age button, cleaned via that method that I just described. One of the things I haven't talked about is silver gilded buttons. Some people use CLR. I've never liked CLR on a gilded button of any sort. This is kind of a mistake of mine. I used CLR on this, and I think it removed a good bit of the gilding. You can see that on the top parts, even with just a very soft bristle toothbrush, that CLR removed a lot of the gilding on that. That had almost complete gilding when I started, or complete plating, I should say, silver plating. Gold is gilded, silver is plated. At any rate, so I consider that kind of a cleaning failure. And so I like really to use a less strong thing. Aluminum jelly I kind of like because it cleans silver pretty beautifully. This is a silver faced button. It's just a flat button, one piece, but you can see how bright and shiny that is. It's pretty nice. Here's another one that I used the aluminum jelly on. This one again, I cleaned the front via that method. I cleaned the back with the toothpick method after it had dried. I think it says London on it, treble. So treble doesn't mean triple, it means highest, highest plated. Anyhow, for that, that cleaning method with the brass bristle, I use that on any gold plated item. Here's a brass religious medallion, a miraculous Mary medallion, and you can see how that just pops with the gold gilding. So any item that's gold gilded, I use the brass bristle brush and a dot of soap on. Also use the same method for cleaning aluminum items, because you can really clean an aluminum item really nicely, an old aluminum token or something, with a dot of dish soap and that brass bristle brush. So for gold items, I use that. For silver items, sometimes I use aluminum jelly. Sometimes I'll use that same method, but very, very gingerly with that brush, because it's more like to scratch the silver gilding. For pewter buttons, once again, coating those pewter buttons with an Elmer's glue and water mixture like this one. Tomback, you're going to want to make sure that you are using a fine steel wool to remove any green gunk, and I just leave them naturally. I don't polish them or clean them in any other way. And then anything that's an impressed mark, I use the trusty toothpick, barbecue skewer, sharpened with a knife, pocket knife, and toothpick that gently, and then wipe it with a little bit of oil from my finger. And anything that has a raised design, I either do the same, or I will use a touch of that steel wool just to bring out the high points, and then again rub with some finger oil. So these are just the cleaning methods that I use. This is after 30-something years of digging. This is what works for me. You may find that your cleaning methods will depend on your soil type, and so what works for me may not work for you. So there's my disclaimer. But if it helps you, stick with it, and no matter what, keep digging. Thanks for watching.